And did I mention about the QR code? Everyone, please direct your attention to the screen right here. There will be a QR code because as our judging panel is sorting out the scores, meanwhile, everyone, let's get ready for a change of pace as we'll be moving into our next set of panel discussions. Now, this year we choose Imagine the Future as our event slogan because technology is shaping the future in a variety of ways, and Web3 is only one of them. It is time to dig deep into the question of how Web3 will impact our daily lives. To shed light on this subject, we've assembled a panel of experts. Please proceed on stage. Ms. Veronika Marciniak, and she is the founder and CEO of Future is Meta. Mr. Phillip, CEO, Artifact Labs. Mr. Samson Lee, CEO of Signum Digital and Coinstreet partner, as well as Mr. Oscar Wendel, Director of MCH Global, who will be moderating this discussion. And I will hand the stage over to you all.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. So today's discussion is called How Will Web3 Shape Our Day-to-Day Lives in the Future? And maybe we should first start and ask the question if Web3 will shape our day-to-day lives in the future. And I wanted to have this discussion about the business opportunities that Web3 brings. And we're very lucky to have such a diverse panel representing different sectors. We have Phillip, who is with Artifacts, building the Spotify of art and representing the art and IP rights. And Mr. Sam Lee, with the financial expert on tokenization. And Weronika, who is building metaverses. So you can say she's the one who is building the marketplace and where the distribution of the digital assets will be taking place. So I was hoping that this discussion can really give a view on what Web3 is as an opportunity and separating Web3 from being a pure crypto play and speculative, and more about Web3 as a technology enabling businesses. And I wanted to start by you, Phillip, introducing yourself and what you do.
Thank you, Oscar. My name is Phillip. I'm the CEO of Artifact Labs, and Oscar had asked me this question before we got on stage, and I gave it a lot of thought. The practical reality, as we know, is crypto and let's say NFTs in Gen 1 were really predicated on speculation, really predicated on trading, and that has clearly met a rejection from the market. Gen 2, we fundamentally see a big change, where NFTs and digital assets really have to solve real-world use cases. They really have to make things better so that we go from Web 2 to Web 3. And so at Artifact Labs, what we're focused on is building ostensibly the Spotify for art. So we work with museums, galleries, the creator economy, and help them first protect their art, protect their IP, second, make it more accessible globally, and then third, create a monetization platform for them. Because practically speaking, if there's no real-world use case for businesses to make money, it really stays stuck in a speculative bubble. And for us, we don't see much future in that, so that's why we are really pioneering use cases around digital assets and really helping real businesses, real institutions solve real problems.
So the problem you're solving, why does it need Web3? Why does it need to be decentralized? And why can't you just do this as a platform to sell art and have customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So number one, I think if you look at what's happened in the last few months this year, you've seen two specific examples of where when museums, who are really the guardians of these artifacts, perhaps take their eye off the ball. So you saw British Museum. They have 8 million artifacts. They were actually having their art sold on eBay, and they didn't even realize. And when they were questioned about it, they did not have a digital registry to actually understand what they held and what they were responsible for preserving through history. Closer to home, Taiwan Palace Museum, they were actually hacked, and all of their digital images for all of their artwork was stolen and put on Taobao within minutes and sold for a fraction of the value. And so when we talk to museums and say, look, what we can do is help you first create that digital registry, that digital twin, so it is preserved immutably on the blockchain, cannot be altered through AI regeneration, cannot be altered by a bad actor or lost. Number one, for them, they go, we absolutely need to do this. The second piece that we do is we now make all of these artworks accessible globally. 90+% of art in a museum sits in storage. So it's not seen. It is the absolute example, definitionally, of a non-performing asset. And if you are holding 90% of your assets not earning money, it's like putting all of your Hong Kong dollar in your savings account and earning zero. So why would you do that? And so when we go to museums and say, look, once we preserve and protect, we can now apply IP rights to all of your artwork, all of the assets that you have, and then make it discoverable to the world. Not everyone is lucky enough to fly to London, fly to Paris, fly to New York, fly to Hong Kong, and see these priceless works of art. And when you make it available online, and you make it so that people have a legitimate sanctioned platform to purchase the IP rights to use it, whether it's for a screen, whether it's for a Casetify case, whether it's for a t-shirt or a book, all of a sudden you will find that there's actually an enormous demand for this. Museums turn this down because they don't have the manpower to actually process it. So by doing it on-chain, we now also create an immutable record of that transaction, and it's all done by a smart contract, which makes it way more efficient than the Web2 way of doing things. And so it becomes a very simple way for a museum to create a new revenue stream, protect their assets, and do things much more efficiently.
So this will change the lives of museums, but can you just clarify that when you do these IP rights for museums, you're going to have multiple marketplaces reselling the IP rights? And another question on that, how will it shape the lives of the consumers in creating, accessing art?
When you think of a museum, their number one mission is to protect and preserve. Their second mission is actually to make art accessible. They are searching for the next patron, the next Picasso, the next Van Gogh, the next artist who wants to create. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of kids who don't get an opportunity to see this stuff because they're just living in the wrong city. And so how this is going to change, everyday lives is frankly making all of this art, all of these assets available and easily accessible to anyone with an internet connection. And that's a lot of people.
And you're working with Samsung, or can you mention that?
Well, right now we're in discussions with quite a number of institutions and a number of partners. An example would be Casetify. Casetify, everyone has an iPhone or a Samsung phone, and on the back of their phone, they would love to have art. And so being able to, work with museums and make those assets available so they can be consumed by consumers, just from a beautification perspective, that is moving the ball forward. We're, with the museums we talk to, there are use cases like Samsung Smart TV and Samsung Art. You have a beautiful 50-inch screen rotating through the world's most impressive artworks. And right now that's starting to be possible, but our mission is to make basically every piece of art available. If you wanted to see Van Gogh, for example, you would have to go to probably a dozen plus museums. And actually, some of the best works sit in private collections, so not actually accessible. So our mission is actually to make all of that accessible, so you can actually see it in one place. And Weronika is doing that work as well, so it's a nice segue there. And at the same time, we're working around tokenization for specific assets as well, which would be a nice segue to the work that Sam's doing.
So, Weronika, you're building metaverses. I guess this will really be the perfect use case for curating art and bringing together the people that are interested to talk about art. Tell me how you think this will impact the interest for art and building metaverses.
Sure, absolutely. I don't, I have to clarify that metaverse is not necessarily Web3, can exist without. It's just the way I look at the metaverse is the 3D future of the internet, whether it is backed by blockchain or not. But it can actually benefit from bringing tokenized assets, which can be held in these virtual galleries. The collections that Phil just mentioned that are completely dispersed or hidden can be exposed and accessible for a broad audience, which brings inclusion to, to art, to not only to art, but to any token, any assets that we display virtually. And the way I see actually Web3 and Metaverse is really the aspect of community is very important. So
how would you build a Metaverse museum with the art from Artifacts? describe what I would reach when I walk into.
I guess it depends, which artists. What was nice is that, Metaverse virtual worlds don't have to deal with gravity and pipes and other difficulties that we face in real world buildings. So there's, the spaces can actually be works of art themselves. And what we see in Roblox these days, most teenagers between 14 and 19 years old are playing in a platform called Roblox, where every participant can create their own spaces, and they have equal rights to do that. So, it's opening up a new world of opportunities for young, talented creators who can do, try to become artists.
Yes, so the world of finance is an art as well, I would say, and Sam Lee is a master. Tell me, how can we jump on the opportunity to use tokenization, and how would you take advantage of this opportunity?
Thank you. I wouldn't say I'm a master, I'm learn as I go. I'm Sam Lee, founder and CEO of Coinstreet. We're a 6-year-old company focused on tokenization. We talk about tokenization of both non-security tokens and the regulated security tokens, right? Because recently, you might be aware, Hong Kong have a very good framework for security tokens. If you look how Web3 changed our world from the tokenization point of view, all of our life, we have many things valuable around us, right, with value. Blockchain or token is a custodian agent of value. How do they store? In a decentralized network, first storage, right, recording the ownership information of who owns what, right? And then it turns into a non-security way, meaning maybe you own a chair, you own a building, well, maybe not building, a chair, maybe an artwork, right? If you own a piece of artwork with one token, the regulator already defined is not a securities. But when we try to fractionalize something and turn it into an investable product, it might become a securities, right? Which is fine. We can look at it by 2 dimensions, right? So one dimension is security and non-securities. The other dimension is tangible and non-tangible, right? For example, when we talk about crypto, we are tokenizing non-tangible asset, right? And trying to be in a non-security way, but sometimes they cross the line and become securities. But when we tokenize a building, for example, it's a tangible asset, and we tokenize it in a security ways. So it becomes security tokens, in a way, an investable product. So just by doing that, I think it can change the ways we invest, the ways we fundraise for projects, and we can facilitate this financial transaction in a new ways.
I would add to it because it also brings maybe assets that are not very accessible, like investments in real estate or wine or any type of asset that closer to broader audience and broader customer base. So, and through that, they also are more keen to learn about it. So it's popular.
But going back to how there is the financial aspect to it, and speculation is always very good when you're on the winning end, I would say. Not that it happens to me very often. But in terms of Web3 technologies empowering businesses, you Phillip, it's a very clear example of that. And I think, do you see that with more interest and more investment, that it can help the community of artists?
Look, I think the practical reality of Web3 is And frankly, for digital assets or crypto, everyone describe it as everyone is looking for the killer app, right? What is the killer app that's actually going to drag us from Web 2 into Web 3 that's not, speculative, right? And so what we really believe in and what we're trying to solve for is actually making something that happens today in the Web 2 world more efficient, more accessible, and priced better, right? That's what every business does in the world, right? How do we make what we do cheaper, faster, and more accessible? And so Web 3, with all the piping that happens on blockchain, really can make it happen for very specific use cases. And so I think what we found is one where there's 100,000 museums around the world, and therefore there's hundreds of millions of pieces of art that need to be experienced and need to be explored. And with partners like RMST Titanic, there's new things that are being discovered every day that they want to make available for people to learn and discover and build communities. And so we found a very benign use case. Who hates on museums? Everyone likes museums, right? Who hates on art? No one hates on art. It's very personal. It's very enjoyable for us to kind of discover these things and aesthetically find value in them and in the academic journey that happens with that. All of us remember times when we were school kids getting on a bus and going to a museum. It's actually fun. And then what this is actually doing is it's planting the seeds for the future patrons for museums, the future donors, the future artists that are going to come up, the future historians who want to learn about the Titanic and learn about all the artifacts that came out of it and why that matters, right? And so we're just one company trying to figure this out, but I know there's hundreds of companies trying to figure out what is the killer app for Web3.
But what you're describing here, digitizing all this art and also building metaverses, there's a lot of legwork. I mean, when you build a computer game, it's, I don't know, tens of thousands of hours and a decade of development. It's the same thing with digitizing the art and distributing it. And Web3, unless it adds money to the pie and enables it, it wouldn't be possible. But I want to hear from you, Weronika, like how you see as a builder of metaverses that you get the quality experience, because at the end of the day, you're looking at a screen of some sort. You're consuming the art, the game, or the video, or whatever. And how is Web3 making that a better experience?
I think really actually what Metaverse does is extending the lifetime of things, for physical events, or expanding the reach of physical spaces like a museum. Web3 or Metaverse don't try to compete, like tokenized assets just add value or preserve value. Metaverse spaces don't try to replace reality. They just add another pocket that you can visit, another room to a museum. So the same way as it works with physical events like this one, in case of if someone can't visit physically, they could join us in the virtual venue of this event. And that venue not only would be accessible worldwide, but could serve as a networking space as well, could broadcast this panel the similar way to, I guess, Zoom, but in a much more interactive and immersive way. And most importantly, it can be open throughout the year. So even for events that happen once a year or once a quarter, they can have a chance to bring people together on more regular basis to present content, event highlights, and maybe even organize some sessions, some workshops throughout the year.
I think that's a really good point, because we don't necessarily have to do everything in Web3. The Web 2 is actually really good, right? Yeah. And digitalization and tokenization is completely different, right? We can digitize everything in Web 2 already. Very good experience with the media, with the content and all that. I think Web 3, the fundamental, at least to me, everyone might have different views, is about the decentralized network and the custodian of value. How do we tokenize, store the value? Web3 is internet of value, right? So we have to make use of Web3 to do the settlement, the ownership, right? How do we facilitate change hand? Whether those are value or no, there's monetary transaction, or whether it's investment or not investment, but it's still facilitating change of ownership, right? Using decentralized network.
I think there's two major paradigm shifts that are happening in Web3. There's many, but two that I'd highlight. Number one, the creator economy is what's new. That's changed. People are making a living on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram. That wasn't happening 10 years ago, right? So that's number one. So cultural consumption is happening in a fundamentally different way. And businesses have to adapt to how cultural consumption is taking place nowadays. If we were all just selling books, it's just not happening, right? So how are we being educated? How are we learning? How are kids today learning? They're sitting in Roblox. They're sitting in different platforms that 10 years ago didn't exist, right? And so I think that's what I'd really emphasize around Web3. Cultural consumption is changing, and then the creator economy is what's driving all of this. And if businesses don't adapt to it, they will be left behind. And this is why museums for us are really excited about what we're trying to do, because it's allowing them to leapfrog into this space while not giving up what they do in real life, because it's still not quite an either or, right? So the physical still matters. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah, we have time for questions, I believe. If there are any, I've got an iPad. I'm told I can get questions on this popping up. While we wait for some questions to come on, then maybe I'd like to follow up on this, that audience and consumption is the key to media. Like, unless you can have digital assets, if they're not traded on and there's no demand for them, it doesn't matter that they're an asset that can be traded. And when you look at any, look at Netflix, that's a walled garden, obviously, and it's the opposite of being decentralized. And the value of Netflix is in the investment they've made in creating their own content and protecting it. I wonder if Web3, I think often when Web3 is discussed, it's almost like you slap Web3 onto it and then you can create value magically. It doesn't matter that it's Web3 if the content doesn't have any demand.
I think there is something called creator staking pools, where you can use the assets to follow creators, and actually blockchain is a very good technology that can drive that. Imagine that the future of YouTube or Netflix, where you can produce a movie and actually get monetized on it. So platforms that are open to creators or studios, because I don't really believe that it should be everyone should be creating stuff. Not everyone wants to create. There are those who like it and do it very well. There are those who don't. But those who want to and can will, I believe, in the future have opportunity to upload or present their work on platforms where not only people will see it, but people will be able to donate or chip in or actually pay for that creator to create more of that content. So by the use of blockchain technology, this can happen worldwide very quickly with with literally unlimited transactions.
That would be very advantageous. I mean, that would really add diversity, because in most industries, when you're mentioning Netflix, Amazon, HBO, and in the music industry as well, it tends to be that it gets concentrated to very few that has all the power.
I think that's...
Sorry. So when I say token is custodian of value, so when we think about in any production cycle, there's a value chain, right? Value being created along the value chain. And all that value can be stored in a token format on-chain, right? You think about, many people talk about tokenizing carbons. So tokenizing carbons, all the value not necessarily being captured by the owner of a forest. You think about people planting the trees, people irrigating it, growing it with the seed, all those value can be captured. So if a carbon credit transaction is done, I think everybody who captured the value should be compensated. And we can do that with Web3.
I'm going to pivot slightly off of that. Coming back to Web3 and how it impacts our lives. Ultimately, we live in a world now where I agree with you, Oscar, a finite number of platforms largely control distribution and therefore control the economics. Web3 and the creator economies are ultimately trying to disrupt that and ultimately trying to put more of the value in the creators and less of the value in the platform owners. The only way to do that effectively is through some degree of tokenization, storing of value or transfer of value, auditing and capturing who is using what and consuming. And I think that is how it's going to change our lives on a day-to-day basis. People will choose to do new things in life because they can now monetize their talents in fundamentally different ways, and not necessarily, if they choose to, they can choose to be, let's call it more independent and platform independent. And I think that's really exciting in the Web3 space. There's going to be people who will really change the world this way. And that's
I believe
the
so
exciting
too.
part. Yeah.
And we have some questions from the audience here. How do you see generative AI redefine the tokenization and creator economy? Who would like to take that?
I look at AI as a support system for creators and for any kind of work, really. It's virtual assistant that can help us develop things faster, quicker, to brainstorm ideas, and in some cases also to create final, I guess, pieces of art or or work. I've seen these tools that where you can type what PowerPoint presentation needs to be about, and AI does not only the text but also images that go into it, and exports a PDF for you. I'm not saying it's the best way of doing presentations, but it is an option, and it's an option where you can compare your ideas and what you would do with someone else without actually spending much time on it. So it's definitely assisting role that I see.
I kind of see AI is, frankly speaking, the genie has left the bottle. It's out. You can't put it back in, right? So that's number one. Number two, legal frameworks will not be caught up. It'll always be lagging to the technology. So we are only now starting to see legal frameworks come in to protect artists from AI regenerative work, derivative works, ostensibly. For us, this is actually wonderful because it actually validates what we do. We actually create the original digital twin, the unadulterated real copy, the true copy, and that is immutably preserved in the blockchain. So if you want to do generative AI off of it, in some ways, God bless. It's going to happen anyways. But if you want to see the true copy, here's what the Mona Lisa actually looked like. And
We're talking about the creator economy here, right? And generative AI, it's derivative of something else. There's nothing new. And if I was just thinking about rock music, there hasn't been a new rock band since Coldplay, essentially. And U2 just opened a concert, a stay in Las Vegas. And when you look at the numbers of listeners on Spotify, the only rock being listened to, which is still one of the main genres, is 20, 30 years old. So, I mean, if it's so easy to gain an audience by copying what's been done in the past, well, it's not a formula for winning and building an audience, I would say, with anything. When you look at getting a hit, it's something that is either so exceptionally good that it captures an audience and it can't be ignored, like Adele, or somebody like Lady Gaga that I've never seen this. This really captures my interest. So I hear, I mean, AI is the word, right? But when it comes to art, the human factor can't be taken out of it, I would say. And want to hear your comments.
Well, I think to fix this, we really have to start from the beginning, right? Because in the creation process, even for the AI, I believe every AI, to be really good AI, need to be trained. We need to figure out a way to really capture the value going in, starting from training the AI, right? The problem now is all these centralized platform. They took all our data and train an AI and capitalize all the value, right? If we do this right, everyone involved, everyone's data being used to train an AI should be compensated.
But my point is, with the creator economy and building an economy, you need to be able to create content that someone pays for. And personally, I haven't seen that happening. Everyone says you can do an AI-generated influencer, but I think it's the real human flaws that really attract us to follow an influencer in the first place. And if you know that it's not real, I don't think it can really generate.
Sorry, we have, can you please wrap up in 1 minute? We're quite over time.
1 minute.
Sorry.
Last statements from each one of you.
Thank you so much.
Veronika, with you.
I'm looking forward to the future, to see when all these technologies come together and will be easy to use and available to everyone.
For me, I think I'm just hopeful. I'm hopeful that we find a way. There's a lot of things happening. But I do believe for Web3 to be successful, we will see the killer apps coming this generation. I really believe it.
Well, when we look at Web 2, you know, the bubble burst and the market only go to a new peak when we have the smartphone come out as a tipping point, as a catalyst. For Web 3, I think the catalyst, because we are talking about like asset, transaction, change of ownership, I think the catalyst is regulation. And the regulation is here, so I think we are now ready to take on a new jump to a new peak.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the sharing. Thank you. Everyone, please take a photo before returning to your seats. And thank you so much, Oscar, for moderating this panel for us. And just a kind reminder for the judges for Team B, please do attend the briefing right now that is happening at the Serenade Chinese restaurant, which is right above where the registration booth is, where I'm pointing. So please go there for the briefing. Team B judges. Thank you so much once again. Everyone, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you.